We're going to continue on in section 5.3, looking at more theoretical probabilities. This time what we're going to be looking at is, we're going to start with something called conditional probabilities. So in this section we're going to focus on associations between two variables. We will explore how the probabilities change based on the different types of relationships we are examining. All right, so we're going to start with our conditional probabilities. Probabilities where we focus on just one group of objects are called conditional probabilities. Right, the probability of A, and then we see that vertical line, which means given, right, and B means to find the probability that event A occurs, but to restrict your consideration to those outcomes that occur within B. So in other words, we're finding the probability of event A occurring given that event B has occurred. Conditional probabilities may be phrased in different ways. We may see the phrase given that, or we might see something that's phrased where the probability that a randomly selected event B is also an event A. So kind of a couple of different key things as far as phrasing goes. Right. So down at the bottom here, what we have are a couple of Venn diagrams, and we're comparing the idea of given that versus and. Right. So in our previous example about marital status and education, the probability that a college person is educated and is married, right, that was the group in the middle, and we were taking that out of everybody in both of these sets. Now, if we are talking about a college educated person is married, right, then we're focusing our fact that we are given that the person is college educated. So we are focusing on one group in our Venn diagram instead of our entire Venn diagram. So as we're going through here, we'll kind of go through some different examples and look at the phrasing, how we can set these problems up, and what's going to be different when we're calculating our probability. Before we do that, we're just going to take a quick look at the first example and try to determine, based on the phrase, right, what are we looking at here. So, decide if the events in the question are used in a conditional probability or an and probability. Explain. Write the statement using probability notation. And what we're going to do is we're going to let the selected person A, event A, is going to represent going online. Event B is going to be that they are a teenager. All right. So the probability that a randomly selected teenager will go online sometime during this month. Right, so if we are looking at this, what we want to decide, are we looking at our whole entire group, or are we focusing on one group? Right, and in this case, we're focusing on, right, the probability that a randomly selected teenager will go online sometime during the month. So we are restricting our original group to teenagers. Right, so it's not just a random person, it's a randomly selected teenager. Right, so in this case, we're going to say that this is a conditional statement. Right, we are given that the person is a teenager. Right, we're not looking at all people, we're restricting ourselves to one group. Right. Using our notation, the probability that a person A goes online, given that B, they are a teenager, we're going to write the probability of A given B. Right. For part B, the probability that a randomly selected person is a teenager who will go online sometime during the month. In this case, this is an example of an and problem. Right, because here in our first one we were starting with just teenagers. Here we're looking at just a randomly selected person. Right, so it's an and. We begin with a random person. So notation wise for this one would be P of A and B. All right, and then for C, the probability that a randomly selected person who goes online, so this time we're restricting our group to the group that goes online, this month is a teenager. Let's definitely a couple of typos in this one. All right. So this would be another example of a conditional probability. This time we are given that the person goes online. We're restricting our original group from the entire to just that group. And this time our notation, probability that the person is a teenager, well, that's B. Given that the person goes online is A, and that's our notation for that conditional probability. Right, so when we're differentiating between conditional probabilities and probabilities, we're looking at what is our original group. Are we looking at a random person? Or are we looking at a random person in one of our focused groups?